Hello and welcome today. My name is Angela Putkela,
And I'm Don Putkela.
and we are from the Putkela Group, Real Estate Professionals. But this is our podcast, Welcome to Livingston, and we have a special guest with us, Joy Dettling, who's the owner of Upswing Wellness, and we have a lot of great and interesting things to get to with her. But first, I know Don wanted to give a bit of an market update since it's the end of the year here.
Yeah, I thought that I would just take a couple minutes. We are getting into December here, moving into 2022 soon, and just wanted to give a little bit of a market update. We talk to a lot of people, and the first thing they ask us is, how's the market doing? Some people are overly excited. Some people are nervous about it. And I just wanted to say the market is really healthy right now. It is not as crazy as it was in the spring. If we were talking to people back in April, May, we were talking about how there wasn't enough houses on the market. It was really tight, a lot of multiple offers and such. But what we're looking at right now is it's a little bit healthier. So if you're a seller, you might not be selling your house in the first day. So having those conversations is important, but it's still really good. It's still really strong. You're still going to be getting a lot of showings. And if you're a buyer, you're not in a situation where you have to overpay for that house on the first day right now as much. Right. I think that it's a little healthier in that there's a little bit of breathing room. It's not quite as stressful. Interest rates are still doing really good. We are expecting interest rates to rise in 2022. I don't think it's going to be anything crazy. We have to remember how historically low they are right now. So all of you out there that refinanced at sub 3, understand that having interest rates in the 3s and the 4s is still historically an amazing interest rate. So,
absolutely. So, and I think having a market that's starting to calm down and not be quite as stressful is a really helpful segue for
especially at this time of year where mental health and just getting that fresh start is such an important thing, and it's kind of what we think about with the new year.
Absolutely. So, Joy, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. So, why don't you tell us about Upswing Wellness and how does it all work?
So Upswing Wellness is my business, and I'm a life coach, and I help people on a very holistic level. Most of the people I work with are, this time of year, people who are stressed out, burnt out, overloaded. I've also worked with a lot of people, though, that are struggling with anxiety or depression, and a lot of times with the health issues that can come along with those things as well. So I, as coming from the perspective of a life coach, I work with people on a very holistic level where we're not just looking at one aspect of that person, but I really look at that whole being, every aspect. I question what's going on with them on a physical level, on a mental level, an emotional level, an energetic or a spiritual level. So it's like there's nothing that goes untouched. We really kind of look at that whole person in order for someone to heal.
Excellent. And it seems like so many people do have issues like this, and maybe they don't realize what a great resource they could have.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think a lot of times, and I think this comes a little bit from my own story, because it's really my own personal story that led and inspired me to do the work that I do today. Is that I used to really struggle with a lot of chronic health issues and anxiety, and it went on for a very long time because I had this feeling that it was just the way that I was. I had a lot of symptoms that were kind of mild for most of my life, and it wasn't until it kind of reached a tipping point that everything got a lot worse, and I had to really focus on, okay, how do I solve this? How do I heal myself? But before that, I just thought that it was normal to be stressed out all the time. I thought it was normal to feel tired all the time. I thought that it was normal, for there to just kind of be this feeling of, there's always something off. And I think that resonates with a lot of people where you just start to accept certain things as just being the norm. But in fact, I really believe that every single person has the potential to live with more vitality, to heal whatever it is that they're working with. And a lot of the people that come to me are those who have already seeked solutions, from the mainstream, or they've seeked solutions for more alternative routes, and they haven't really found the answers they were looking for. And I truly do hold the belief that there's always going to be an answer to any issue that someone's working with, and it's just about digging a little deeper. A lot of times people have not looked on more of a mental, emotional level when they're working with physical issues. A lot of times people haven't really looked at how are all these different things connected when they're working with their health or their mental health.
Because it is. I believe myself that it's just so interlaced.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of, in terms of the guests that we have on, or just even in our real estate practices, we focus in on living your best life.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, health is such an important component to that. And, it makes me sad to think, but I think you're absolutely right that people out there don't even realize that they can live their best life.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that it also requires a little bit of a shift in our priorities too. That I think very much our culture and our society really promotes, a little bit of overdoing, overworking, trying hard, and also focusing a lot of that energy out on other people, on our work, on our family, on our friends, on other social groups. And a lot of times we tend to miss ourselves in that whole complex.
Right.
And really I'm truly of the belief that, I love this idea of, using like a cup as a metaphor for like our energy reserves and our ability to give, and that we really have to fill our own cup first. And then once we nourish ourselves, we give care to ourselves, we fill that cup, our own cup, then it starts to overflow. And that's like a new place that we can give from. And it's more like giving to others, giving out to the community from a place of abundance, as opposed to, us feeling drained. My cup is empty, but I'm still like,
Still
giving
trying
out.
to give.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But if we fill our cup first, there's just this new energy behind what we're able to give out to others.
Absolutely. I love that
Mm-hmm.
view.
Right, because we are in such a go society.
Right.
And I think a lot of people don't realize how much of your health, there's a mental aspect to that if you're not taking care of yourself mentally, or you're not giving into yourself via spiritually, physically and such, then there's really nothing left there, because those reserves are gone.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And that it's really about, that nourishing on like all levels too. Like you were just mentioning, that it's like, it's not just about, okay, am I eating the right things? Am I exercising? Am I like, doing that? But also, yeah, am I taking care of my mental health? Am I taking some breaks throughout the day? Am I giving myself time to rest? Am I taking care of my emotional health? Am I, acknowledging and addressing if there's emotions going on? Am I expressing them? Am I finding healthy ways to express them? And like also like if you were looking at like more of like a spiritual level too, I think purpose has a lot to do with that. And the question is, do I feel like I'm providing like a value for like the greater good, or do I feel like I'm following more of an individual purpose in my life? And I think all those things, we really have to focus on all those levels in order to feel fully nourished and for that cup to feel full and abundant and overflowing.
Right.
Right. Well, I think it's very interesting because, if we look at the pandemic, a lot of people kind of reassessed what they were putting their time into. I mean, me and Angela, we have 3 kids, and before we were running all over the place. It was, taking to this event, taking to that event, and then having that opportunity to step back. I think a lot of people looked at that and was like, am I putting my energy into the right things? Is shuttling all over the place the best thing? Or is, I was working all the time, and now, that person is staying home more, and they realize that maybe that wasn't the best place to put their energy, and maybe there's a different, health that can come out of, like you said, kind of digging into where you're able to dig into all those areas.
Yes, absolutely. And I've heard that similar story from so many people about this past year and a half, that it has, as many people as I've heard this past year and a half has been a huge struggle for. I've heard just as many people with positive stories about how exactly what you said, where this kind of, requirement to take a step back from a lot of things in life actually did cause them to have to reprioritize things, to actually like think a little deeper about, what's really going on in my life, how am I structuring my life, and there was kind of an opportunity for a lot of people to make big shifts this past year and a half, or big
Right.
changes, and a lot of for a lot of people a requirement to do that in one way or another. So it I think any time that we face something that interrupts the pattern, it's an opportunity for us to choose how we want to create ourselves differently, or how we want to express ourselves differently. And I think, before the pandemic started, and this is just something I think that happens in our modern society, is we get into these patterns, we get into these ruts, we just going with the flow. Like every day is kind of the same,
Yep, time to make the donuts.
But the beginning of the pandemic, it was a huge pattern interrupt, and everyone kind of had to, question like, whoa, what's going on here? What am I doing? And how do the world is going through some major changes, and now I get to choose, how do I want to change? How do I want to be
Right.
different at this time?
Absolutely.
So,
It was
lots
an
of big
impetus
change.
for a lot
Yeah.
of people. And even, in terms of real estate, we weren't sure what was going to happen. But a lot of people found that maybe this wasn't the right house for them, the right environment. And so that has really, made things go a little bonkers, I think.
Yes. Yeah. And I guess that kind of leads a little bit into what you do. I know we had a question on here, and I know Angela knows a little bit more about it than I do. I come into this not knowing anything really. So I guess the question is, what exactly is perception reframing, and what does it entail?
Yeah. So this is kind of like the main thing that I do with my clients right now. And these are a session where we work on healing the subconscious layer. And so a lot of the people that I have worked with in the past have been people that have been dealing with issues for a long time. Usually they've tried a bunch of different routes. Again, maybe they've gone more like, the Western medicine mainstream route. And maybe they've gone more to some of the alternative routes. They've tried lots of options, but nothing's really worked for them. And I work with a lot of people who, are dealing with different health issues, but also mental health issues. And, they tend to either find that nothing that they're trying is working, or that they've done a lot, but they've kind of reached a plateau. And there's like a certain level that they just can't get past in their health or their well-being. And so when I hear that, or when I see that trend, it's led me to think about the subconscious immediately, and that there is something on the subconscious level that is holding them back. And if you are familiar with certain people, like I know the two of you are Tony Robbins fans.
Yes.
That people like him, or Dr. Joe Dispenza is another popular name. They talk about this idea that how our beliefs really do create our reality. And that if we're holding on to certain beliefs, self-limiting beliefs, negative thought patterns, that it can have a huge impact on our life. And 95% of our brain activity is subconscious to us. It's formed from early childhood conditioning that could come from our parents. It could come from society. It's formed from, past memories, past traumas, things that we've even forgotten about, but our subconscious still remembers it. And so there can be a lot of negative thought patterns held in there. There can be a lot of self-limiting beliefs. Some of the really common things are things like, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, nothing ever works, things like that. And if we have a held belief like that in our subconscious, it can really hold us back, especially, when we're trying to make gains in our health, or our wellness, or even, on our finances. There's, I think, a lot that goes in with money mindset in that. There's, or also relationships as well.
Right.
And like, for example, when I was, working through my health issues years ago, one realization I had was that I held the belief that I was a sick person, because I just had always, had this feeling of, not really feeling well for much of my life. So I just held on to this belief that I was weak and that I just don't feel good.
You use that to define yourself.
Yeah,
right?
I started to identify myself that way. And so what these perception reframing sessions do is they work with the nervous system, using frequency technology, and it allows an individual to kind of hit like a subconscious reset button around a specific topic. And, the topics can range to just about anything. And I've had people see effects in all ranges, really, effects to their health, effects to their mental health or their emotional health. I've had people heal relationships with other people. I've had people, report much more ease at work, or more confidence at work, more confidence in the world in general. And one of my favorite comments that I get from people is that they feel like they are more themselves after doing this work. And what that always shows to me is that there's been kind of this removal of like negative conditioning, or things, patterns from society, or that have been passed down, that have caused them to really not be themselves. We're often trying to like please other people, or fit into a mold that might not be ourselves. But one thing that I notice a lot of people report is that when they do these sessions, all of a sudden they're feeling more authentic. They're feeling more confident in just being themselves. They're willing to look at their lives in a different way. Like we were mentioning at the beginning of the pandemic, when there was a pattern interrupt,
Right.
This is like a pattern interrupt, where it really allows people to look at themselves differently, their lives differently, and just make, huge amounts of change.
Wow, because I know mindset is such a big thing, and I'm going to get the quote wrong, and I think it was Henry Ford, but he said, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. So it's that whole idea of when you have those negative stereotypes, or you have those things in your life that, are stopping you from breaking through or getting to that next level, just kind of having that positive mindset is more than half the battle most of the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really is. And I totally agree that, right, if someone comes in, and this is, because I always have like a conversation with people before I start working with them. And I have told people, like, this might not be the right time for you to do this work, because I can tell if someone comes in and they're already not believing that this is going to work for them, right? That there's like a certain level of like, oh, this isn't going to work, or
You need an open mind.
or you need an open mind, and you also need to be ready too. And sometimes, I'll identify if someone's coming in and they're just not ready. Either I'll kind of do a little bit of coaching with them to kind of question about that and see if we can get that mindset to change. But two, I'm a total, I really do believe that if you kind of have that belief that, it's not going to work, it's not going to work. So
Self-fulfilling prophecy there.
it is. Yeah. Yep. And two, a lot of times we hold those things on the subconscious, and that is kind of where this modality is really powerful, is that we kind of don't know what we don't know sometimes. And this whole, a lot of people hear about these sessions and they kind of think that it's a lot like talk therapy, but it's actually quite different. Whereas you think about talk therapy, a lot of times it's like you're talking with someone else and you're trying to figure out almost like what's the missing piece of the puzzle? What is it that's going on? Or like, how can we consciously make changes? And this is very effortless. It's very different. It's really just working with the subconscious. We're kind of repatterning the nervous system. And when we allow the nervous system to have like a new way to function within certain situations, everything gets to shift and kind of reshuffle itself out in a different way. And it's not like we have to consciously, take ourselves or force ourselves to change in a certain way, but it's like we kind of clip the strings that were kind of holding us back, and all of a sudden it's just we naturally go there.
Awesome.
And,
Which kind of makes me think of this conscious dance that you tell me about a little bit, 'cause that's sort of a natural sort of motion.
It is.
So tell us about that.
Yes. So these are some new local events that I've started up recently, and they've really just been magical so far is the best word I can think of to describe them. And so conscious dance it's a therapeutic space for people to move their bodies however they need to move their bodies. And so most people's experience with dance might be at like a club or a bar or a wedding, or it's usually a place where there might be substances involved to help people get a little looser, or just like, it's like a different kind of space. Where the other like way to look at dance is, if you look at most traditional cultures, dance is like a central part of the culture, and it's something that is used to build community. It's something that's used to allow for expression, emotional expression, physical expression. It's also, you look at some cultures, it's been like a way to like connect with like the divine even, so it's like it's even used in like very spiritual way in some cultures. And my intention for creating this conscious dance, again, is to move away from kind of the bar scene. And what if we bring dance more to this like therapeutic aspect? And we really don't have many opportunities to do that in our culture. It's actually very foreign for most people. And, and for newcomers to this, it can be a little nerve-wracking too. Because a lot of times, we need like a couple drinks or something to loosen up before we're willing to move our bodies. And so that even is a part of like the healing and the growth process that happens when people start to do these events, is that a lot of times we come to our first event and we feel like a bit inhibited. We feel really self-conscious. And however, it's what I witness in first timers, really like every time someone comes, is that like, okay, there might be a little bit of an awkward feeling at first, but then like, about 20 minutes into it, like they're starting to move a little more and they're starting to feel a little more comfortable, and you're starting to see them like getting into it more. And then, by the end of the dance, it's like they've just like completely let go. And, the music selection that I choose, it's very much meant to help people to be very creative in their expression. So it's all types of music. It's all tempos. There's slow and there's fast, like all genres. And so that it's really kind of, provokes people to be creative in their movement, and also just have lots of different options for expression. And so, and I'll even mention, I know we're getting close to the holidays, and there was someone just this past week that just came into dance, and they were like, my intention is just to like relax. And like they told me before dance started how they were, just really stressed out with the holidays starting up. And, and lo and behold, by the end of the dance, they were like, yep, I feel relaxed.
Awesome.
So,
that's great.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I wanted to make sure to touch on, because I think maybe last year, because everything was locked down and people weren't seeing their families, and it was like a little more low key, maybe not as stressful. But now that people are seeing people and it's a little bit more traditional setting, I feel almost like it's a little more stressful for people. So do you have any suggestions, any ideas, any insight you can offer to people?
Absolutely. Yes. And like for the holidays, I'd say like there's probably two stressors. The two biggest stressors that come into play would be being overly busy, right? And
Imagine that, right?
And family.
Yes.
And so, with being the overly busy, I think it's really about just like taking those still moments every day, and just like setting those little boundaries of time for yourself every day. And, even though your schedule might be a little fuller, just having like a little space in the day. And I always recommend people like just put this in your calendar, even, a half an hour each day just for like me time or just for quiet time. How many of us is it actually a rarity that we have like silence and stillness in our day? So even just to like lay down and be still for 20 minutes can be profound. And then so that's the one thing, is just make sure you keep some stillness and some time for yourself in your day. And then also with dealing with family, and I think this past year and a half has made things more difficult too, because either we haven't seen family as much, and there might be like huge differences that have developed between us and our family members. And I think a huge help in that is it's actually a Buddhist practice called loving kindness meditation. But I just want to speak about this concept of loving kindness. And what that is we can think of this as like compassion for others. And just to realize that when we're moving through challenging times, that everyone is. And even if it's someone that we really, we relate to, we're in 100% agreement, we're on the same page with them, or if it's someone who's like at the total other end of the spectrum with their beliefs or, their habits or where they're at, is that if we can just extend compassion towards every individual, it can go a really long way. Not just for those other individuals that we're extending it to, but also for ourselves. That if we can just, see everyone as being someone who's on their own unique journey here in this challenging world, trying to find their place and figure it out, and just see compassion for those people. And one metaphor that really helps me to tune into this feeling is, and especially with someone who's a real challenge for you, if you have a specific family member who's really pushes your buttons, is to tune in with that person as a child. If you were to take them back to be like, let me just imagine this person as a child, when they were still just this innocent thing, maybe even as a baby, and let me just tune in with that energy, with them being a child, a baby, their innocence. And can I still recognize that as being a part of them right now? And I find a lot of times it's really easy for us to show compassion to children, right? Because they hold that innocence. And so if we're able to actually look at each individual and kind of still see the child within them, which, that energy really is still there for anyone who's explored inner child work. We still do all have a little child within each of us. And so if we can just kind of tune into that energy within each individual, for me, I found it to be a very easy way to start to show compassion or this loving kindness energy towards other individuals.
Interesting.
That is so good.
Way to kind of tap into patients that you may not otherwise have.
Right, because I know Angela talks about having an attitude of gratitude, or coming from kindness and such. Yeah. And I think in these instances with family over the holidays, a lot of times we don't realize how much of that tension we actually bring ourselves into that situation. So I love what you had to say about, seeing them as a child or coming at it from their point of view, or just understanding that, there's always two people in that, right? To know that it's okay to step back and calm down and find that healthy spot.
Because that person that's stressing us out, I guess, until we were talking about this, I hadn't even really thought of it. that maybe we stress them out even more, right?
Yeah, that usually is the case. And that's that kind of metaphor of like when you point your finger at someone, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you, right? So, and I find, why does family challenge us the most? It seems to be a common trend that it's like your family, those are the people who, sometimes they're the people you love the most, but also sometimes they're the people that drive you the most crazy. And it's often because, we have the most shared patterns with our family members. And that a lot of times when we see something in someone else that's really driving us crazy, it's actually a reflection of something within ourselves that we see in another person. It might be an aspect about ourselves that we don't like, or we don't feel okay about. And we see it in that other person who's reflecting it back at us. And that can be why we feel that greatest agitation towards particular family members.
Right.
And so I think a lot of times, right, if we start that idea of compassion, of loving kindness, and we bring that energy into the interaction, it's going to go back. It's going to go towards that other person, but it's also going to come towards yourself as well. And what I find as well, because I have done work with multiple members within a family, and I've seen big shifts and changes happen within families, is that a lot of times when one person changes, it requires everyone else in the family to shift and change as well. And so, just for one individual to start to hold this compassion towards everyone in their family, all the other members of the family are going to have to shift and change too.
But it can be a spark. Sometimes again, interrupting that pattern.
Exactly.
Because people like what's comfortable, and sometimes what's comfortable isn't healthy.
Yes.
So, if you look at it from that point of view as well, because, you mentioned Tony Robbins for a second, and me and Angela both went to Unleash the Power Within and such. And he talks a lot about, like you said, those pattern interrupters that you snap, and you need to change something to get the change that you want.
Absolutely, yeah. And that change can be like a domino effect for people, right? So all it takes is one individual to make change, and all of a sudden everyone around them has to kind of shift and shuffle and make change because this person changed, right? So it's like, okay, now I have to change, and then the next person in the line has to change. So it's really cool actually to witness a single person in a family make big changes, and how the whole family starts to shift around that.
Yep, that impact that makes.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Mm-hmm.
So I always want to make sure to check in with every guest and what they like best about Livingston County. But it sounds like from prior conversations, you've really been to a lot of different places, done a lot of different things, and now you come back home here. And did you tell us about that?
That's very true. Yeah, I have actually spent a lot of time living in other parts of the country and other parts of the world, actually. And it was just about a year ago that I decided to come back to Livingston County, which is where I grew up. And what is it that I love about it is that, I feel like there is a real kind of like a humbleness to people here. I feel like there is, and also like a realness to people here.
It's that authenticity.
There's an authenticity to people here that I really appreciate. Whereas, I've lived in a lot of other places where, I feel like people are trying to put on a certain persona, or they're trying to like be a certain way, or they're, and what I like about Livingston County is it just feels real. People feel real here. And there's just a sense of like humbleness, or just, which I think of, metaphorically as being like a connection to the earth, but it's also like a groundedness. Right. I've being in the wellness world, I've lived in a lot of places where, there's a lot of people kind of on this spiritual seeking path, or, they're on like these different, like everyone's like going to like yoga retreats and whatever. And it's like, so like in those communities, I've spent so much time around people that are just kind of up in the clouds, and what I really love about being here is there's a certain groundedness to people here
really
that
down
is
to earth.
really down to earth, and it just feels very comfortable.
No,
you know?
it's very friendly. It's
Yes.
very open, and very comfortable. A story I like to tell with just that community and that openness and such. When our oldest son was 5 or 6 years old, he said, "I'm going to go down the street and see if a friend's home and play." And we're like, "Okay, well, go down there, knock on the door. It's 3 doors down and such." And he comes back like 10 minutes later, and he goes, they're not home. There's no one in the house. And I go, "Well, did you knock on the door?" He goes, "No, I went through the front door and I looked all over for them and they weren't there."
It's just, and we've talked about this very Norman Rockwell-y, and but I think we do, look to the people of Livingston County, and that's a big part of this. And as people share some of the things they like, there's a culture, and I think some of the words you've used here, haven't necessarily come up, but they're totally true. Like, it's all these different facets about, the people that are here of Livingston County, and just all so positive, and it's just such a special place to be, and we feel very fortunate to live, work, and just be here in Livingston County.
Yeah.
So I guess a good question is if someone is struggling, or they are saying, "Hey, what I heard about today, this sounds like it for me," or "I'd love to just check out the dance portion of it." How does someone get in contact with you? How do they start the process?
Good question. So just, quickly for dance, I started a Facebook group for it called Livingston County Conscious Dance. And that's probably the best way to find out more about the dances. I have one every Sunday morning right now, and I'm also looking to add a second time for it in January. And as for working with me, you can look up my business, which is Upswing Wellness. Upswingwellness.com is my website. And I think the way to get it started is really just, to ask yourself, like, am I ready to make change? Don't ask yourself, is this possible? It's more like, am I just ready to change? And I always find that it's really just all that's needed is that readiness to get started. And I'm always more than happy to have a quick chat with people, before we get started, to make sure that, whatever we're doing is the right fit for them. And so best way to reach out to me generally is my email address, which is joy@upswingwellness.com.
Fantastic. Well, this has been really great, very educational, and I hope that our listeners have found the same as well. But, we're glad that through all your travels that you have come back home, and want to say welcome to Livingston.
Me too.
Yes. So, no, thank you so much for coming today. We really do appreciate it. And to everyone out there that's listening to this podcast, please check out our other episodes, subscribe to it. If you have questions, please reach out through our Facebook page, give us a call. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, Google, just about anywhere that you're looking for podcasts. Just look up Welcome to Livingston Podcast and you'll find us. And again, thank you so much for listening today, and welcome to Livingston.
See you next week.